Welcome back, Guardians. In today's report, we will begin to unravel the mysteries surrounding one of the most iconic and intricate warlocks this city has perhaps ever seen. Osiris, veteran of 6 fronts, apprentice to the Speaker, and the beacon of light to hundreds of Guardians across the galaxy. But surely, an individual so pedestaled, a proclaimed savior of the city, has only positive support and not disastrous motivations. Records from the city library and first-hand accounts from Guardians closest to him paint 2 separate tales. One of a hero, the true leader of the vanguard and defender of our last bastion, and one of a madman disillusioned with the Traveler, its blind high priest, the Speaker, and a traitor to the refugees seeking sanctuary in our great city walls. By the end of this report, ideally, you'll have the best information at your disposal to make an educated decision on your interpretation of his story. But make no mistake, the cult of personality that surrounds him, his heroic feats in his past, and the lure of what we don't know about him make it very difficult to paint him in a bad light. Much like Toll and the Shattered, the possibility that awaits us in the unknown is often more intriguing or alluring than the difficulties mounting in front of us. To Osiris, the woes and tribulations of the last city were a means to an end. Humanity was surviving, edging out a meek, if not pointless, existence against the unending hordes of alien enemies. But to Osiris, it wasn't enough to just fight against that which wanted you dead. He sought to understand the why of it all. Why are these aliens here? What is the darkness? And why are we fighting for this Traveler? The first 2 questions are innocent enough. Many Guardians question and study our enemies and the loyalties they may have. But to question the Traveler and its motivations is close to heresy. At the time of 6 Fronts, there was a clamoring of support to nominate Osiris as the new Vanguard commander. After all, he had the support of the legendary Titan Saint 14 and many of the warlocks from various orders. He had a certain charisma about him, an undeniable ability to lead against unassailable odds, and the support of various factions within the city. All factions except the Concordat. During his nomination as Vanguard Commander, the Concordat, under what many would call the traitor Lysander, presented questionable evidence on the resurrection of Osiris. The Concordat claimed, and I quote, "To have records providing you, in this case Osiris, were a Golden Age experiment misincarnated as a human by an inept ghost." Now, many of you may question why this damning evidence, if it can even be called that, is so important to denouncing the new Vanguard leader. But history shows us that the Concordat faction had a strong distrust for the Speaker and the political peace brought about by the consensus. Now, it could have been their way to act out as the city's political anarchists, undermining an individual who had some semblance of power or more influence than Lysander himself. The records are unclear, but we know that many Exos were Golden Age born, that someone, a human, wanted to live forever, and mortal flesh could no longer defeat the erosion of time. This isn't definitive, but there is a potential that Osiris could have been more than flesh and blood. It's possible, but one historical remark of an outcast and disreputable faction should be no cause for alarm. But Osiris, like many warlocks, fight 2 battles. The external war for galactic supremacy and survival against the darkness, and the second silent war, an internal one, the war to discover truth. Throughout the time between 6 Fronts and the Battle of Twilight Gap, Osiris would lead the Vanguard as its new commander, but slowly, much like a moss creeping in the shade of a tree, doubts would fester. Were strike missions truly useful against our enemies? Did the Cryptarchs actually understand the engrams they were given? Or was their position admired due to the superstition that surrounded them, rather than their ability to decrypt matter? Could the speaker actually commune with the traveler, or was his position simply another mask to hide behind? Or did the Vex hide, locked away in their vault on Venus? Why did the Hive construct shrines to a faraway king of decay? These doubts, these questions, would lead Osiris to misuse Vanguard resources in the pursuit of new truths. He would have ghosts and guardians alike seek out the Nine. He would use precious ships ready for space travel to reach the reef, craft that during the time were the city's most valuable resource. Ultimately, his ideas would split guardians and distract them from protecting the city. The hunters would no longer guide refugees to safety. Titans would seek out treasures of fame and fortune rather than occupy the wall. And warlocks would lose themselves to maddening abilities, akin to the Thanatonaut's death dreaming. You see, during this time, the city was still weak. It had barely survived the fallen aggression during 6 fronts, and the scars from the faction wars still lingered. To many, including the speaker, banishment was the only option to refocus the Guardians lost to Osiris's tempting offerings of understanding the unknown. But perhaps this is what Osiris intended from the start. He could accomplish more as a romanticized icon than a politicized figurehead, as the outcomes of his banishment are still seen today. For warlocks, the lessons of Osiris and Toland are some of the first learned, scorched into the mind of every young seeker in an attempt to dissuade them from their true purpose. But Osiris's study on the Vex, or interest in it, has raised more questions on their true nature and ultimate motivations. Unlike Toland, Osiris was known to work directly with other Guardians and their organizations well after his banishment. It is rumored that Osiris was the first to whisper the promises of the Vault in the mind of the Titan Kabir. He still maintains connections with the current Vanguard hierarchy, as he is known to have dealings with Eris Morn, one of Ikora Ray's clandestine hidden. Specifically, records suggest that during the Reef's involvement in the Taken War, both Eris Morn and Osiris had a direct audience with the Awoken Queen Mara Zav. Interestingly, there seems to be an intriguing trend with the involvement of Osiris in major occurrences, ultimately supporting the continued survival of the city. Perhaps that was his intention from the start, to lead Guardians from the shadows, far removed from the influences of the light and the temptation of the darkness. But there are still whispers and echoes of his existence, as if Osiris is both alive and dead. A true phantom, only revealing himself to those he deems most worthy. Saint 14 was sent after Osiris on Mercury, only to disappear into legend. Even Guardians that reign supreme over their peers and are granted audience on Mercury are shown only traces of his existence and no definitive proof. All that remains are the cultists seen on the Reef and beyond, like Brother Vance, only speaking in cryptic phrases and coded sentences, like the untranslated or unintelligible parables of the Allspring and fractal scrolls. These cultists lure Guardians to test themselves against one another, preparing, honoring, and even mentoring them in the hopes of shaping them into something grander. But for what purpose? Guardians have always been motivated by the treasures of fame and fortune, but to actively use that motivation to test themselves against one another in honorable matches, there has to be an ulterior motive for these cultists, and you'd be wise to question why they ask you to fight, for it certainly isn't for their amusement. But the question remains, is Osiris still alive? Is he walking between the timelines or realities created by the Vex? The cultist hovel on Mercury brought us no closer to understanding the truth, and if those cultists know his whereabouts, they most certainly aren't loosening their lips. So the question comes to you. Do you believe Osiris is still out there, searching for the truth and motivating guardians for an unseen coming of the unknown? Or is he another warlock lost in his own ego, seeking answers to questions that either don't matter or remain ineffectual to the problems in front of us? Perhaps we shall know soon. Or perhaps Osiris will become another lost guardian of legend, his name teaching us lessons only exile can bring. Seek the truth, Guardians. Hey everyone, Wally here. I just wanted to let you know that it is my current goal to bring this channel back. But to do that, I'm going to need to be shooting for at least 2 Destiny lore videos a week, so that's what I'm going to be doing. Each lore video is voted on by the Lore Seeker community in the Discord server. All are welcome to join, and your input is needed. So if you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe. Every small bit goes a long way.